Good afternoon. Welcome to the March 25th, 2019 meeting of the Lincoln City Council. I'd like you all to join me as we stand and do pledge allegiance to the flag, followed by a moment of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those in opposition. The applicant may make a short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating their name, address, and whether you're speaking in favor of or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the City Council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meeting of the month, that would be today, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date, nor planned for a future agenda. Madam Clerk, would you help us with our first item tonight?
Yes, we ask those of the general public coming forward to testify to please clearly state your name, spell your name, give your address, and sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the podium. Testifiers may use either microphone, and there is a sign-in sheet by each microphone. We ask city staff who are testifying to please state your name, title, and the department you work for. Our first item of business is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 3. And I will note for the record, we did add an item under the miscellaneous referrals. Item 3A is setting the hearing date of Monday, April 8th at 3 p.m. on the application of European Grocery and Deli for a Class D liquor license at 2601 Champlain Lane, Suite 100. So if anyone wishes to come forward on items 1 through 3, they may do so at this time.
Would anyone in the chamber like to speak on these consent agenda items? Seeing no one coming forward.
All right, if not, we can vote on these items. Item 1A was introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Gaylor Baird, second by Councilman Eskridge. Discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Items 2A and B and 3A were introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Raybold, second by Councilman Eskridge. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge? Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next then are our public hearing liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward and raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. I'll call items 4A and B together. They're the application of Aroma Indian Cuisine for a Class I liquor license at 114 South 14th Street and the related manager application. Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes,
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
my name is Sanjaya Pandit, Sanjaya Pandit, and address is 114 South 14th Street, Lincoln 68508.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pandit, for coming forward. Tell us a little bit about your application. What brings you here today?
I'm applying for the liquor license. It's an Indian restaurant, and people are like asking for the liquor. So I'll be the responsible seller for the liquor, and so I'll do whatever I can do to the community. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there questions from the council? Councilman Christensen.
Are you open currently, or when do you plan to open?
Yes, we are open currently.
Okay.
Other questions from the council? Thank you very much for coming forward. That's all we need. Is there anyone else in the chamber that'd like to speak on these two agenda items?
Mr. Chair, seeing none, I would move approval of items 4A and 4B.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Camp and a second one by Councilwoman Raybold. Discussion of items 4A and B. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next then are public hearing resolutions. Item 5A, approving the creation of the Snow Removal Task Force to examine snow removal procedures and recommend changes in the best interest of the citizens.
Hi, Chris Connolly, Acting City Attorney. Councilwoman Lamb asked me to prepare this resolution for your consideration. I'll let Councilwoman Lamb kind of take the lead on it, but I'll be here for any questions.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. So we had a number of complaints and concerns in the winter Operation Snow Removal in the last couple of snowfalls, and it came to our attention that the last time that the citizens were involved in making decisions regarding winter operations was back in 2009, where it relates to snowfall. And at that time, we hadn't had a really bad winter in quite some time. So it's time to re-examine those expectations and needs of the citizens. And I was going to ask Mickey Esposito to come up, but she's not here this evening. So Lonnie, can I have you come up just for a moment so I can ask you just to clarify a couple of questions?
Okay, this is still part of your initial presentation, correct?
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
We're still in the same spot.
Yes, and I just wanted to verify that there were different levels of snowfall in different falls in different parts of the city, and that one of the issues, I think, was that the snowfall amount that we used was not the same as what was being reported out at the airport.
Yes, that's correct. We use somewhere, and Tim can help me out, but we use about 12 to 14 citywide sensors, different data sources along
Why
with
don't
our...
you introduce yourself,
Oh,
too? For
sorry,
one
Lonnie
audience?
Berkman,
Thank you.
Assistant...
Thank
Lonnie
you,
Berkman, Assistant Director of Transportation with Lincoln Transportation and Utilities. Yes, that's correct. We often see, and on the news reports, Lincoln Airport Authority with their measurements, but we actually use a lot of spot sensors citywide to come up with an average snowfall total. And as we saw this winter, those can vary citywide. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you so
You bet.
much.
Any more?
No, I don't think. I think we go to public hearing.
Yep,
Absolutely.
that was my next step.
Yeah.
Are there others in the chamber that would like to testify on this agenda item? Ooh, hats.
Yes. As you know, when I come before the city council, I wear many hats. For this particular item, I wear my CFIT hat as president of Citizens for Improved Transit. Cindy, my concern is that not only were the streets not cleared real well and completely, but for us bus riders, it was a horrid mess. Apparently, there's no comprehensive plan for clearing a path from the curb to the public sidewalk where there are bus stops and bus shelters. What happened was the plows came, they threw up a tall ridge of snow, and bus passengers had to climb that ridge and go back down in order to get on and off the buses. I've spoken to Mike Davis about this. He said, well, there are about 5 different entities that do this, but I'm not sure that we know which ones are supposed to do which bus stops. So I think, Cindy, as a part of your task force, your committee, we need to address the issue of the bus stops. Also, I have some concerns about the clearing of the sidewalks themselves. There were a lot of sidewalks that weren't cleared. Now, my understanding, and Acting City Attorney, you can chime in. My understanding is there's an ordinance that by 10 a.m. after the snowfall stops, the sidewalks need to be cleared. That was not happening. We used to have sidewalk inspectors here in Lincoln years ago. There was a Dwayne Kohanic that worked for Public Works, and his wintertime duties were he would cruise the town, find sidewalks that weren't cleared, and then take steps to make sure that they got cleared. This could include having a city crew come and clear it and charging it to the property owner. So I'm not sure we have sidewalk inspectors anymore. I'm not sure that they're going and, telling violators to go ahead and get things cleared, but we probably need a few more of them out if we have snowfalls like this. I think, Cindy, what you're proposing is very much needed. I think we need to be prepared to cope with this. Maybe next winter we won't have as much snow, but we can't guarantee that. So I'm in favor of a group
There it
coming
is.
together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions for this testifier?
Thank
Thank you very much. Would anyone else in the chamber like to testify on agenda item 5A? I thought she was coming forward to testify.
I think she is.
She still is? Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Kinsey, you faked me out there for a second.
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs of Lincoln Government. I'm glad I'm able to speak today, Mr. Show, be about something that I wanted to speak about before. I'm in favor of this. The Watchdogs is in favor of it. A democracy requires, is designed for the public to have input, and there has not been input in the last and in this administration. There's too many committees that are handpicked, and they do the bidding of the present administration. And this follows the 2015 vision, and many of them are contractors who are making millions from downtown infrastructure and development. If we have public input, we believe that the mailboxes of citizens who had been mowed down would be considered for reimbursement. It's appalling that the city doesn't have enough money to pay these people. You as the city council could make a change with that. I remember at one time when we had forums for the public to speak about various issues. They can be difficult, they can get unruly, but so be it.
Agreed.
Democracy is not perfect, it is not efficient, but the public needs to have the chance to speak. The issues of managing them, I think, can be done if they are in an orderly fashion, just like all kinds of meetings. I would hope that the people who are not Republicans on this council would vote for this to pass and not let it be a Republican-Democratic issue. Hopefully, you want the public to have their opportunity to speak also. Thank you for bringing this to the public and allowing the public to have this input. And I hope that it will pass. If it doesn't, we would encourage there be some kind of public information. I don't know if you would call it a referendum from the public or what. I don't know how the city council sees that as the way the state does. But the public needs to have their input, whether the administration leadership likes it or not. I think it helps people to feel part of government if they have this opportunity. Otherwise, they don't vote. We have a terrible representation of vote in the United States. And if it was more at the local level where people could speak, or send email or write letters on various issues. It would be encourage participation. So I hope you'll pass it. And I hope that you will consider whatever
1 minute left.
party you are, whatever part on the council that you have, that the public needs to speak more. And you would have open forums, whoever wins this election. I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey. Are there others in the chamber that would like to speak on this specific agenda item, the task force question? Seeing no one else coming forward?
All right, if not, we can vote on this item. It was introduced by Lamb.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Lamb, second by Councilman Christensen. Discussion?
I'd like to offer a motion to amend. If
Did
you'd like to
want
have
speak
discussion
your
first.
I did, I'm sorry.
I'll let her speak to her motion first, then come back to the, yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate that this proposal does include 2 members of the public, residents in each of the 4 quadrants of the city, one to be appointed by the council member for that particular district and one for the mayor's office. So I appreciate Ms. Kinsey's recognition that the public will be involved. And then I did, before we consider the substitute, I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Connolly, if that's possible.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thanks for coming back up. I just wanted to ask, because there was a testimony by Mr. Schmeling, if the, in its present form, the motion, the resolution is sufficient or can accommodate the type of exploration that he was requesting we look at, as far as the snow removal at bus stops and that type of thing.
I think so.
Okay.
This, it's clearing those ramps is really part and parcel to the streets.
Okay.
And they're certainly in residential areas, and so, yes,
Okay.
I would say it is part of it.
And also under this, is there anything that would keep us from adding someone having to do with transit onto this committee?
Depends on what capacity. If you wanted them in a position to actually be a member of the task force, it would probably need a new resolution or an amendment of this resolution. If you wanted to bring someone in as some sort of a contributor or support staff or something like that, then the answer would be no.
Okay, so we would be free to, that task force could probably call Mr. Schmeling and talk with him about the transit, but.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilwoman Gaylor-Baird?
Just wanted to offer up a motion to amend for consideration that basically requires the task force to also conduct fiscal impact of the recommendations and adds a finance representative to the task force, so that as different levels of service are being weighed and considered, the associated costs are also a part of that conversation and available, because I'm sure that depending on how much a particular service level costs, if it took money away from StarTran, that might not be something that Mr. Schmeling would support. So I think it's important to just have it grounded as a budget conversation.
I need a motion and a second before we continue.
Second.
Yeah. Hers was a motion, but I didn't get a second. Thank you. Mr. Christensen. Now, I'm sorry about that. It was a little administrative there for me.
It's just to clarify and strengthen the process. And again, it clarifies that it's winter operations policy, because that also includes ice removal as well as snow. But primarily, the difference is that it includes an employee from the finance department, conducts a financial assessment of the recommendations, and allows subject matter expertise to staff the task. Subject matter expertise, whether it's StarTran or others, can be available to staff the task force.
Other comments? We have a motion and a second for a substitution amendment. Councilwoman Lamb.
Thank you. Yeah, I think these are good changes. Wish I would have seen them a little sooner so I could really look at them. But I do believe that these are reasonable, and that at the end of the task force, certainly any changes in fiscal impact would be presented to with the recommendations. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Camp.
Well, not to throw a wrench in the mechanics here, but looking at the task force composition, it's fairly heavy on our city staff, government people, and I'm wondering if this whole idea is to be a citizen's response and so forth, if we don't get an unwieldy committee, but if the council ladies would consider something to get a balance where it's oriented more toward the private sector.
Well, one thing I'd be happy to make a change in response to that is if we want to make that finance department representative a non-voting ex officio member, that there's no reason that person has to be a voting member, but I think it's really important that that person is on the task force providing the cost analysis for different recommendations of different levels of service. In the past, the citizens have had a lot of input on our snow removal policy, and a large percentage favored a 6-inch policy, but the department went ahead with 4 inches to try and make sure that there was more optimal clearing of snow in residential areas. Part of the reason there was favor for 6 inches was that it was, of course, cost less. So I think just making sure that we are looking at those costs makes sense, and if that person doesn't need to be a voting member, though, if that would help.
That's fine. I'm just making the observation and see, but I'd really, because it is citizen-oriented or focused to get input, I'd like to see a good representation there.
So,
well, there's at least 9,
I'm
John.
going to go to Councilman Christensen next.
Well, I don't necessarily share the same concern that John has, because without the expertise of staff members, it's hard to make good decisions. And so I think they're there to provide good information so that the public members of this committee can help make up their mind what needs to be done.
Councilwoman Raybold?
I was just going to say that, there's 2 residents from each district, that's 8, and there's 1 representative from the business community who's actually a resident as well. So I think that there's 9 residents, citizens, and as well as the professional staff that should be available to answer any of the questions that they have. So I certainly think that's a fair number.
Well, those residents could be city employees for that matter too. I'm just trying to get a balance so we get input there so it helps people feel comfortable. So those are my only comments.
Councilwoman Lamb?
yeah, if I could ask, John, would you be more comfortable, since this is supposed to be a task force and make recommendations, obviously I wanted to include those that relied upon our roads for what they were doing, and I know you understand that, our first responders and so forth. I would be comfortable with making all city employees non-voting members of the task force when it comes to recommendations, but available to meet with the task force in order to make decisions.
I'll go kind of with what the majority here believes. Yeah, definitely we need that input.
Other comments, Councilwoman Gaylor?
I was going to reiterate kind of the
question for Mr. Connolly after you finish.
The point that Councilwoman Lamb was making, that in this case, police and fire are there as users, and I think it's important to have their perspective and I think their vote on where they most need to have prioritized removal of snow and ice, given where they have the largest call volume for service. So in that sense, they're a user, not a city staff, whereas, of course, someone like the Director of Transportation Utilities is a non-voting ex officio member, and the Finance Department could be as well.
Mm-hmm.
The district ones, the city council is non-government employees.
Right. Well, what I'm thinking is if the last 3, the mayor, designated representative, and 1 member of the city council to be selected by city council, if we made F, G, and H, or F and G also, all 3 of those ex officio non-voting members, then I think, because I think it's important to certainly keep the representative from Public Association of the Government Employees Union as a member, and then I think the rest going forward have to do with first responders and the the citizens and businesses in the community. So I would make a motion. I'm sorry.
We've got a motion and a
We have-
second on the table.
I understand.
She's going to make a motion to amend, but you had a question for Mr.?
I do, because this is actually a substitute. The motion to amend is actually substitute, correct?
Correct.
So we can amend this before we actually vote on this. Okay. And so that's what I would move to amend 1F, G, and H to make all three of those positions ex officio non-voting members.
Substitute in the
In the
proposed-
substitute, that's correct?
Waiting for a second.
I'm sorry. F through J, I'm sorry.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Lamb, second by Councilman Camp to make items F through J, those representatives, non-voting members of the task force.
That would be ex officio non-voting members. Is that
Correct.
Ex officio.
What about I?
That's what
I?
I said F through J.
She said F through J is including us.
Yeah, F through J.
Oh, sorry.
And this is on the substitute resolution. We're making this motion to amend, which has a second. And is there
Who
any addition?
seconded the motion to amend?
Don
Councilman Camp?
Camp.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion on the motion to amend? Councilman Christensen?
I don't like it. There you go.
Okay. Whatever it is, no. Would you call the roll, please, on the motion to amend the substitute
Can we talk about it a
resolution?
little more? Can we talk about it a little more?
Would you hold off on that roll call?
Sure.
Yes.
I guess with finance and director of utilities, transportation utilities, it's more like a staffing function. I guess I want to hear from my colleagues more how they feel about whether or not the city council member on the committee ought to be having a stake in the recommendation process.
Council members, I'm sorry, Councilman Christensen?
That's why I don't like it. We were elected by the citizens of the city to vote and to put our input on things, and this is one of the things where we would be able to put our input in, and I think it's important that a council member be responsible and make input to the rest of the council on these kind of matters.
Councilwoman Lamb?
Sure, I would agree that the council members should give input to the rest of the council members. In this particular task force, there would be 2 members from each district, and so to have the council member have a vote actually gives 3 members in one particular district a vote, unless it was an at-large member, and there's no way to indicate whether that would happen. I do believe that you would want the council member there in order to hear and report in. So report back. But I don't know that having them as a non-voting member changes that. Their ability to input.
Just admit, why don't you just amend it and say the city council member can vote?
Okay, I'm willing to do that.
Official.
Yeah.
So
Do I have to can I just modify my motion to have G through J?
No, you want
Well,
F.
No.
F and H through J.
I think what you need to do is take the vote on the motion that's pending,
Okay.
and then you could, Chair can
Necessary.
entertain another motion to amend after that. And
Okay.
you'll still be on the substitute resolution at that point.
Okay. Sure.
All right, so, other discussion?
so to clarify, this would be a vote on the substitute resolution as proposed without any modifications?
No,
Or would it be?
It's currently with the modifications proposed by Councilwoman Lamb.
To modify making F through J.
If you agree with her
Okay.
suggested change in voting members, you'd vote yay. If you disagree, you'd vote nay.
But then
Council-
she's going to make a motion to include,
I think she's hoping that
H
this motion will fail, and then we'll
or
come
G?
back and do it again.
No, I think we can approve this motion and then come back and reinstitute. I think that might be just the easiest.
Yeah, it won't approve the resolution yet. It's only approving a motion to amend.
Motion, yeah.
So there'll still be another opportunity to amend after that, if people want to.
And I would be in favor of reinstituting the number G. I just think it's easier to approve motion to amend F through J, and then come back and move, come back and move to make a voting member.
if I could, Cindy, would you make a just withdraw this motion and make a new one, because otherwise what we're gonna have to do physically is go through, change those, and then go back in and add it in. That's gonna make it very messy.
Oh, absolutely.
Before that happens, I want to call on Councilman Christensen. Councilman Eskridge.
Been called worse.
Councilman Eskridge, you've had your hand up for a moment. You wanted to comment.
I was just trying to, in my own brain, summarize what we've got. So we've got 8 residents, we've got 3 employees, and 1+ business people as it stands now, what's recommended as voting members. Then 5 ex officio city employees, that department level people, council people, mayor's office that are non-voting, right?
That sounds like what the amendment would do, yes.
Thank you, Councilman, whatever your name is.
And if I may, I'll withdraw my previous motion.
Thank you.
Sure, and I will offer.
I will allow that, yes. Thank you very much,
Thank
Councilwoman.
you for allowing that. And I will make a new motion to modify to make numbers 1F and then 1H through J ex officio non-voting members.
Thank you very much.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Lamb, a second by Councilman Christensen. Discussion of the new motion to amend.
I didn't second that.
I'm sorry, Camp.
Camp did.
Camp, there you go.
Yeah, that's better. Let me do this again. Motion by Councilwoman Lamb, second by Councilman Camp. Discussion, Councilwoman Gaylord Baird.
I would love it if we could hear from the Department of Transportation and Utilities folks just about whether or not, what it means to have their department representative on the task force not have a vote. What's your take on the proposal?
Hi, Lonnie Berkman, Assistant Director of Transportation and Utilities. I think pragmatic reality is we'll have our handful of folks there that are listed in the resolution. We're happy to provide information, data, education at some of the upfront meetings, and whether or not we're in a final voting role or not, I think we're fine with that. We wouldn't be voting against a majority of the citizens or other people that we're making recommendations, quite frankly, anyways. So I think if we're there in a role to help guide meetings and provide expertise, that's our role.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Berkman. Other questions or comments on the motion to amend the substitute resolution? Pardon me. Would you call the roll, please?
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
No.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. Now, motion on the substitute resolution as amended. Thank you. Any additional discussion before I say call the roll?
Just so everyone's reference, then after this, we will have public hearing, is that correct? Or are we done?
We're done.
We're done.
Done, okay,
Richard was part of public hearing. I think, yeah, we are.
okay.
Councilwoman Gaylord Baird.
I would just like to state for the record that I believe the intention of this task force is not only to hear from these particular residents and members of the public who are listed, but to come up with to identify what the priorities are of the public. And I would expect that there would be a survey of additional citizens that we would, in this process of identifying the priorities and needs and expectations of residents, that there would be additional work done beyond just having these folks gather, that there would be surveys, et cetera. So I think you'll see that there is broader public input as a result of putting these folks together.
Other comments? Now, would you call the roll on the motion to substitute with this amended substitute? Yeah, words.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Now a vote on the resolution as amended with this substitute.
Read my mind.
We just did.
We just voted on it.
Don't have to vote,
We're
yeah.
done. Yeah.
We're good.
Good.
So.
I like that even better.
We have no public hearing, ordinance's second reading, so that means we can move into the voting session. We just have one item. Under ordinance's third reading, amending the pay schedule for the employee group whose classifications are assigned to the pay range prefixed by the letter A by creating the classifications Environmental Health Education Supervisor and Public Health Education Supervisor, introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second?
Got a motion by Councilman Eskridge, second by Councilwoman Raybold. Discussion? Hearing none, would you call the roll, please?
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you.
Our resolutions on first reading are items 8A and B. Ordinances first reading are items 9A through C. Our pending list are items 11A through F. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter not on this agenda and not planned to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time, since it is an open microphone night.
I think there's a group coming, please come forward. There's a group coming to speak about housing. Could I get a show of hands of how many testifiers would like to participate in the conversation about affordable housing? There's 2, 3, okay. Thank you very much. And welcome to public comment portion.
Jose Lemus, Joselemus. My address is 2215 South 14th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68502. Thank you, Chairman Schob and council members. My name is Jose Lemus, and I'm a community organizer for the Collective Impact Lincoln program. CIL is a partnership between Civic Nebraska, Nebraska Appleseed, and the South of Downtown Community Development Organization. CIL works with residents in 6 neighborhoods to build community, develop neighborhood leaders, and take action on policy that is responsive to the needs of Lincoln's residents. Through our work, we've spoken with 9,000 residents, and the need for quality and affordable housing has come up as a critical issue for families across our city. Currently, about 34,000 families in Lincoln are dealing with housing adequacy issues and increasing rents. This can range from having skyrocketing rents to being forced to live in rat-infested apartments. I am here to advocate for comprehensive solutions that ensure that every Lincolnite has access to quality and affordable housing. Lincoln needs proactive policy solutions from you to ensure that every Lincoln resident has an opportunity to achieve the good life. We ask that you create legislation that revises our city's rental registry to include 1 to 2 bedroom units, expands the definition of potential triggers for interior inspections in our municipal inspection code, and implements a proactive inspection model for all rental properties in Lincoln. Passing a city ordinance that implements these measures would incorporate around 10,000 to 15,000 housing units into the inspection process, reward good landlords for running a good business, and protect tenants from retaliation from bad landlords. These are recommendations that have come from residents. We haven't pulled them from thin air. These are from conversations with your constituency. Last Monday, a group of residents partnered with CIL to deliver to you more than 100 postcards that contained individual resident experiences with housing quality and affordability in Lincoln. These individuals are your friends, these individuals are your neighbors, these individuals are your constituency. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by some of these residents who will share their experience in dealing with inadequate housing quality and unaffordable rents. During their testimonies, you will hear stories that reinforce our city's need for comprehensive policies that improve the quality of housing properties, grow landlord and tenant relationships, and establish a safe way for Lincolnites to find safe and affordable housing. Finally, with my time, I would like to ask individuals that are affected by housing inadequacy issues to stand and show your support for policy solutions that work to ensure access to quality and affordable housing for all Lincolnites. Thank you for your time, and I'll be willing to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for this testifier? Yeah. Questions from the council? Councilman Christensen, I got the name right.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And so, this idea of having a registry and inspections, who would you propose pay for those?
So there are similar inspections across the country. So cities similar to South Sioux City, Nashville, Crete. There's been different size cities, so it would be part of the fee process. And the way that it's been demonstrated in the sustainability matter across the country is that those fees aren't massive fees. They're usually similar to processing fees, so it would be paid in the processing fee.
And do you think the landlords would pass those expenses on to the renters?
I think so.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions from the council? Mr. Lima, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for weighing in. Are there others in the chamber who would like to take advantage of the public comment portion of our agenda to speak?
Hi, my name is Catherine Weiss. That's Katharen. Weiss, that's Wiese. I live at 1037 South 13th Street. So that's right by Casey's on 13th, if you don't know about it. I moved to Everett this summer with my husband. We got married. It was exciting. So we lived in Everett just since the summer, not very long. We were lucky our pastor asked if we wanted to rent the apartment next door to them. I can't tell you how convenient it is. Our pastor, friend, and neighbor is also our landlord. I know my experience is exceptional. I also know we are privileged in many other ways. One is that we had options. We chose to live in the Everett neighborhood because we wanted to. So as a community organizer for South of Downtown, community development organization, we have witnessed this is not always the case. Too often we find residents in our neighborhood are trading off quality for affordability. They wish their landlords were more attentive and their units were better maintained, but they think this is what they paid for. So we need proactive interior and exterior inspection if we want to ensure we are protecting and ensuring adequate quality of life for all renters. As an individual who has been personally impacted by the lack of affordable housing in Lincoln, I know the impact this can have, not only on your quality of life, but on your dignity as an individual and the dignity of your community. Oh, I'm nervous. I can feel it. Okay. So when I was 14...
We don't see it.
Okay, cool. I'm trying. When I was 14, divorced through my mom from being a full-time parent to a full-time CNA, my senior year of high school, we ended up moving into a friend's basement so we could save money. My mom was sleeping on a bunk bed in a craft room for over a year, and she gave up the full room so I could have a space of my own. We have to come together as a city and do all that we can so that our most vulnerable residents don't have to make the decision between dignity and quality affordable housing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss. Questions for this testifier? Again, thank you, Ms. Weiss. Are there others in the chamber that would like to speak during the public comment portion of our agenda? If you come sit in the front row, that way the...
Hi, my name's Kathy Lohmeyer. It's spelled C-A-T-H-Y, and the last name is spelled L-O-H-M-E-I-E-R. I live at 1625 Garfield Street here in Lincoln, 68502. First of all, I just want to say a little thank you. It's spring. I want to thank the creator of this incredible earth we live on. It is truly the mother of all things. And I want to thank all the city council for this opportunity to speak. I'd also like to thank the elders, past and present, of the indigenous people of Nebraska, whose land we are now having this meeting on. I also thank all of you for being here tonight, because you are showing interest, concern, and energy in the governance of our city. I'm here because I live in the near south area of Lincoln, where the population is dense and the rental property is even denser. I'm here to speak in favor of a Lincoln ordinance to manage proactive inspections of rental properties. And now I'm going to tell you why I think that's an important piece. I walk my neighborhood. Everyone should walk their neighborhoods. You see a lot more of your city when you walk the neighborhood. And I see multiple mailboxes and multiple electrical units, and I see multiple housing numbers, so I know they're rental properties. And based on what I see, which is only on the outside of these businesses, that there's an urgent need for inspections. There's an urgent need for an ordinance that will allow people to inspect the insides of these units. Because, you know what, renters have a right to a habitable living space. Buildings have to be maintained. We all know that. I don't think there's any argument on that. When buildings are not maintained, they deteriorate. For example, when buildings have iced over sidewalks, or missing siding, or broken windows, holes in the roof, rotting porches, unsafe stairways, all of this is just stuff I see on the outside. You can just imagine what things might be like on the inside. We should all be concerned about the inside of those buildings, and I think we should be even more concerned about the insides of the buildings. Because with deterioration comes the possibility of other complications that will endanger those inhabitants. Mold, animal and insect infestations, and any number of plumbing and electrical problems. Renters have a right to live in an inhabitable space. Now, I know there's opposition to such an inspection ordinance. They say it's not necessary. The majority of landlords take care of their properties just fine. We don't need that paperwork. Well, to that, I say one word: restaurants. Yes, restaurants. They're owned by and large, and people keep the kitchens clean and the food safe. They didn't want any extra paperwork or oversight. Yet there are yearly surprise visits from our city health department in restaurants to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. It protects the public health. Renters are part of the public, and they have a right to a habitable living space without fear of retribution, eviction, harassment, or for standing up for their own rights. It would also, having this done by the city would help take out some of that adversarial relationship between the renters and the landlords. Just to put this in perspective, those who rent by choice or by necessity, they represent some of our most vulnerable of our society: the disabled, the elderly, students, single wage earning families. According to MarketWatch, an article, January 29th, 2019, from 2013 to 2016, the median net worth of a homeowner was $231,000. The median net worth of a renter, which was going down, was $5,200. So they need us. They need us to be advocates for them because they don't have the power that money sometimes gives in government. They need all of us. In closing, I have sat in this chamber before and I've listened to business people asking for help from the city council. Well, I'm here asking for your help tonight. Don't just be the business city council, be the people's city council and enact an ordinance that will protect renters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lohmeyer. Questions for this testifier? Council.
Yeah, Ms. Lohmeyer, I just want to mention, I used to serve on the city housing board, and we reviewed apartment units and so forth. So I want to check on that. It's been a few years since I did that.
Sure.
To update exactly the procedures, because we did have some things, and I can't recall how much was report-based, from citizens or what have you, but we'll see if we can check into that. So I appreciate your testimony.
I just think it's, it's public health. It's a public health issue, and we address it on many levels in our city, and regardless of what the cost may be, I think that's something we can afford to protect the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from the council? Again, thank you, Ms. Lohmeyer.
You bet.
Would others like to speak? I think it's your turn. But you've been patient.
I'm going to segue us a little bit here. Is that okay?
Yes, that is quite all right.
Greetings, council, chair. Appreciate this time that you offer citizens to speak. I'm coming here on behalf of my church, Restoration City. My name is William Stewart Starks, STEWART-STARKS. I live at 1103 West Q Street. And I just want to remind you that someone representing concerned citizens about the clinic in our city was before you not too long ago. And so since the last time we came before this council, 40 more innocent and precious babies have been murdered in our city of Lincoln. And I just want you guys to think about that for just a minute. Okay? And this is every month. So, and I haven't heard from anyone on this council about that. So that's interesting. But tonight we can make a course correction. Our God is gracious to us. We can repent of our sin before God, who loves us and will forgive us. Jesus' suffering on the cross teaches us the severity of our crimes before the author of all creation. Crimes that have diminished life itself and have been taken the life of others in our care. I pray that each of you seek him and his kingdom first and learn to govern in light of his commands to us to seek justice. Thou shalt not murder, whose law was written on your very hearts. You know this, because it's been written on your hearts, so you can know the truth. The killing of these little children is an affront to us all. It degrades humanity to obey arbitrary, man-appeasing judgments, as Roe versus Wade. We know each of these children possesses their own unique DNA and distinction. We're designed with a purpose in this life and are cast in the image of God and given his divine breath of life. This so-called potential life being extinguished is unique. It's valuable, and a spirit of light which is gifted to us all from above. We can see this on a sonogram. We can hear it in a heartbeat, and we can witness it in the love and joy of our own children. I have 3 children, one in my wife's womb right now, and I accept it as a baby, child of God. How have we tolerated this for so long? This horror has persisted for 40 years. Some in our nation no longer even bat an eye to the idea of murdering a newborn baby who's crying on a table in our hospitals, taking that life. This is horrific. The truth is that continuing in the sin produces the fruit of seared conscience, a callous heart of stone, and God forbid, eventually a reprobate mind. When the light of God is rejected over and over again, we are given over to darkness and horrific imaginations of evil, and that's where we're at today. It's time to turn around. You must decide if you fear the approval of man, his law which changes with the passing day, or God who created the foundations of the world and the universe, who knew you before he formed you in your mother's womb and knows the number of hairs on your head, and who knows your every thought. We can choose to obey unjust laws that have only served to destroy our very souls and have taught us to tolerate some murder as we continue to expand the scope of death's destruction. Or we can obey God and realize that an unjust law is no law at all. Realize that killing the most innocent among us is no salvation and stems from erecting an idol of comfort in our life, the furthest thing from loving our neighbors. I pray that we seek God for courage tonight and that he moves tonight within each of us, replacing our hearts of stone in some cases with ones of flesh that can love these preborn neighbors as sons and daughters, and to whatever is required to protect them from death sentence. Lincoln can be a beacon of light to the rest of Nebraska, rather than a destination where men and women become wounded as they memorialize the place of their shame and judgment here in our city for murdering their children at the altar of Baal at 48th and Old Cheney. There is much work and healing that needs to begin to care for the broken and lift up these parents. When I consider President Abraham Lincoln, whose statue stands across the mall, and the slave question, I ask myself, have we truly extended equality to all? No. More black babies are killed each year than ever before. We've replaced a lash with an acidic bath, a syringe in the heart, a skull-crushing forceps, a blade to the neck of innocent black children. And I will leave with you the words of Martin Luther King after the Birmingham bombings in his poetic address. And I hope you'd read it tonight to see how much we need to value human life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart Stark. Are there others in the chamber that would like to speak today?
Are we on the whole open microphone thing at the end of the session?
Yep. Yeah, but there's a young man behind you, and
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just relaxing.
yes.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Chris Morton. I live at 326 South 26th Street. Was I supposed to give other info?
That'll work.
Cool. All right, well, I come here today for 2 things that I know that I'm not going to receive, but I am here anyway because I've talked to a whole lot of people. I work as a tenant organizer, and I talk to a whole lot of people who feel very strongly about the issue of housing in this city. You know, those people They don't mind much for the decorum that, runs this room. And to tell the truth, I don't either. I don't come here as a representative of any nonprofit, but a community that I grew up in and love very much. And so with that in mind, I come here to ask for two things that I know that I'm not going to receive. I'm here because, these people feel very strongly about it. People on 11th Street who have probably just got off work and are walking home with their children to an apartment that is riddled with black mold. I'm here for a woman who lives on 48th Street, who lives on housing and disability, who's probably waiting for the bus home as we speak. And for someone who lives on 63rd Street, who is currently rationing their insulin to pay for their rent. I am here to ask all of you to be half as brave as they are. I'm also here to dissent to a captive audience, so I appreciate your presence. In trying to prepare my thoughts for all of this, I was really struck with a sense of cynicism. I mean, a slew of nonprofits, HUD workers, landlords and lawyers just jockeying for position to decide in exactly which way Lincoln will be gentrified. And so that's just some foregone conclusion. The cynicism though, I get it, right? You're politicians. The housing crisis isn't really a crisis to you, it's an opportunity. These terms, quality and affordability, displacement and gentrification, they're just abstract terms. They're just abstract to you. A lexicon that you'll learn to speak the moment that it becomes politically advantageous and not a second sooner. The policies that you pass are just going to pad your resume. They're not going to address the structural issues at play here, so that when you run for higher office or seek a lucrative position at a local nonprofit, you can point to your resume and say, look, I did something. But and I know, and the tenants that I work with know that that is an opportunistic way to phrase the truth. That in the 2 years that Democrats have had control, they've been stewards of the status quo. In real terms, this means that housing is unaffordable for half of the people in this city, that code enforcement is laughably impotent, and that the near South, Everett, and Woods Park neighborhoods are just a few years away from gentrification. The truth is this: we need thousands of units of affordable housing, thousands of units which the private market will not deliver, which inclusive zoning, TIF, the currently proposed community land trust as it stands, and tepid studies from the mayor will not make happen. As a city, if we create the conditions that attract capital-intensive corporations and private developers, we also need to acknowledge that it is only right that we invest in the Lincolnites who were here first. I am here today to demand that you be courageous, and I am here today to demand housing justice. I'm here today to demand that in whatever legislation, in whatever policies you put together, that you center the communities who will be displaced if we do nothing. If we simply let the market take its course. The invisible hand will be the knock on the door to evict all these people in these neighborhoods.
1 minute.
We need courage from our politicians because we are in crisis. I need all of you to be brave enough, to be courageous enough and bold enough to save the city that I grew up in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Questions for this testifier? Again, thank you very much. Are there others that would like to speak? Hi there.
For the record, I'm Richard Schmeling, RICHARDSCHMELING. I live at 4610 Van Dorn Street. I told you I wear many hats. So I'm wearing another hat now, except we haven't made up a hat for this other organization. I am the District 1 Director of a group called ProRail Nebraska Incorporated. Our mission is to try to improve and increase rail passenger service in the state of Nebraska, and we're also concerned about StarTran. Lincoln currently is served by 2 long-distance trains, one each way. They come through in the middle of the night. The boarding times are not real convenient. President Trump has introduced a budget proposal which would defund all the long-distance passenger trains in this part of the United States. That would mean we won't have any rail passenger service through Lincoln. The California Zephyr trains that come through one way each way won't be running. That is not a situation that I think we want to see. If anything, we should be building our infrastructure, our rail passenger service, rather than Xing it out. What I would like the council to do is I would like the council to, at some point in time, adopt a resolution in support of keeping our California Zephyr trains running and send it to our congressional delegation and urge them, when they work on the budget, to put money in to keep those long-distance trains. Our ridership on the California Zephyr, in spite of the late hours, it continues to increase year after year. The boardings at the towns, Omaha, Lincoln, Hastings, Holdridge, McCook, the boardings continue to rise. These trains are long-distance trains that operate between Chicago and Emeryville, California. Emeryville's near San Francisco. A lot of people use these trains not necessarily to go the whole way, but for regional trips. We have statistics that show that Lincoln people use the trains to go to Chicago or Denver. Hastings people use it to go to Omaha. McCook people use it to go to Denver. There are a lot of short trips. We know that rail is the all-weather mode. When Interstate 80 is closed due to blizzards, when the airplanes can't fly because of snowstorms and icing, the Amtrak trains may be late, but they get through. They're the all-weather mode. There are many, many people in Nebraska, in the smaller communities and further out, and even in Lincoln and Omaha, where this is the only practical form of public transportation for them. So I urge you, and I have submitted to your chairman, Councilman Shob, a proposed resolution. I hope that at some point in time you will adopt it and send it to our congressional delegation. That concludes my remarks. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions from Mr. Schmeling? Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there others in the council chamber that would like to take advantage of the public comment portion?
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Karen Lamb, K-A-R-E-N-L-A-M-B, 4901 Northwest Fairway. Today, I would like to talk to you as the owner of Lulu's on N. Some of you are familiar with our crazy business model that says that we feed everyone, whether they can pay or not. The vast majority of the people that we are feeding are homeless. But today I would like to talk to you about the other portion of the people that we are feeding every week, and that would be the working poor. Whether it's the grandmother who is housed in a big old house that needs a lot of repairs that she can't afford to do, but she stays there because it's big enough to house the grandchildren and the extended family that she is caring for. She comes to me a couple times a week to get a hot meal. Or the guy that's living on disability. He has a place to live, but his disability often doesn't stretch far enough for him to have groceries at the end of the month. These people who come have something in common. They all express gratitude that they can come and get a meal. And the next thing that they do is they apologize. They apologize for having to come. Now, I've lived in Lincoln for longer than I haven't lived in Lincoln. And we like to say that it's a great place to live, and I believe that. But nobody should have to apologize for getting a meal. So I want to leave you with that. We need to do something.
so that everyone has a place to live and enough food to eat. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Questions from the council? Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Robert Way, R-O-B-E-R-T-W-A-Y. I live at 801 Elevado Avenue. I thank you for your time. I came here to address issues I brought up at a previous meeting regarding certain comments which have been made by local political operatives. And the things I was talking about is how we have to guard the Overton window, things which we allow to be in the public discourse. Today I've noticed that we have some visitors who are younger people learning about city government. So I'm not going to go into detail on the comments that were made because I don't think it's perhaps the right time. What I'm going to do is leave you pictures posted by the professor who was threatened and had to check with the UNL Police Department, this picture. And that picture has a certain hand symbol, which used to be innocuous, but has recently been adopted by certain members of extremist organizations. When the reports about Mr. Bresman came to light, one of the responses is we didn't know. And that's understandable because these sorts of groups operate in subcultures. And if you don't understand the symbols of a subculture, you can't understand what people are saying even if it's right in front of you. So I thought I would come, distribute this information which is coming out as the professor, as the people who are continuing this investigation to see where it went, are coming through. I thought I would share it with the council. That way the council knows, because I'm sure the council finds all of this activity abhorrent. Because I've met all the councils, and I would be shocked if that wasn't the case. Did you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Way. Any questions from the council for Mr. Way? Mr. Way, thank you very much for sharing. Are there others in the chamber that would like to take advantage of our public comment portion?
Jacob Grell, excuse me, Jacobgrell. I'm here as a concerned citizen about housing affordability. So.
Hi, Mr. Grell.
How's it going? Housing affordability is stability. A place that someone can be proud of, they can have the dignity to have that peace with them. And then the more opportunity for someone to feel dignified, the more opportunity they could have to feel connected to the community. And you increase social connectedness, you increase control over folks. Access to safe, affordable, quality housing affects everyone in that, in what I just said. Often the most vulnerable folks don't necessarily possess all the resources to be able to find this housing independently. They might need to search for assistance with community resources, social services, anything that can connect them and tie them to more of navigating this complex system. And a lot of these folks are also just an accident or a medical bill away from being back on the streets. So, and just to put a little bit of perspective on it, if someone gets a standard supplemental security income monthly, and let's say they have no subsidy for whatever reason, maybe they're not eligible, voucher's not available, and they're paying, let's just say, fair market rent in Lincoln, that leaves them about $4.96 a day to supply for the rest of the basic needs. They'd be paying 80% of their income towards rent. So that's what I've got. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Grell. Questions for this testifier? Usually no one has questions, but I just say it for the sake.
I get it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grell.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm Suzanne Blue. I am representing Matt Talbot Kitchen and Outreach here in Lincoln, also talking about affordable housing. My address is 3111 West Bow Bridge Road. I always stumble on that, especially with online.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. People, if you're not aware, Matt Talbot provides daily meals, outreach services, housing and addiction recovery, 365 days a year. Many of our clients spend the majority of their income to keep a roof over their heads. So we serve, the majority of our clients are the working poor, and we've heard about the challenges that the working poor have, homeless as well. It's, you know, it's all they can do to get their rent paid, so then they come to us for help, and our numbers are great, increasing each year. And I'm very thankful that we are there as an organization to support them and provide those services, but it doesn't make it right. You know, just because we're there to provide for some of those basic needs, it should be that everyone has the right to good quality, affordable housing. And affordable, that's a point I want to make. I mean, we hear a lot about that. Affordable housing is a hot topic everywhere right now. But affordable is a very broad term. So I'm here to encourage some thoughtfulness for those who are extremely low income, earning 30% or below the area median income. I think it's important that we recognize that wide range of needs when we talk about affordability as it relates to housing. And in many instances with the people that I'm seeing, we're calling it essential housing. Getting them off the streets and saving their lives. We must acknowledge that there is inadequate housing, conditions like mold, we see faulty plumbing, electrical issues. My staff have seen a lot of that themselves as they go around trying to find appropriate housing for persons that we are serving. And it's horrible. I mean, some of the conditions, and they, you know, impacting their health, their well-being, the limited possessions that they may have. We've seen flooding in apartments, and we work with a lot of wonderful landlords. So this isn't, you know, my opportunity to say, you know, that's all bad, because it isn't. But we need help. We need help in addressing the need for greater access to quality, affordable housing, more standardization in terms of guidelines. And we'd invite any of you, just as a friend to Matt Talbot and a friend to people who, the working poor and homeless, to come and see some of the housing units that we rent for our clients. So you could see, and we're working very hard to find, you know, the best condition of housing for the limited funds that we have. And there's just not much available. And I don't want to exploit any of our guests, but I think you would find it very eye-opening to see what we have to settle for in some instances. So at any time, you know, give me a call. We'd invite you to come and take a look at some of the units that we are renting space in. In the end, you know, keeping people housed and adequately housed in good quality, affordable housing, it reduces costs for our city, and it's just the right thing to do. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Blue. Questions for this testifier? Again, thank you.
Good evening. My name is James Goddard. I live at 3036 Prairie Road, but I'm here on behalf of Nebraska Appleseed. Appleseed's mission is to work for justice and opportunity for all Nebraskans. Here tonight also to talk about housing affordability and adequacy, starting from the proposition that all Lincolnites deserve a safe and decent place that they can afford. Right now, as we've heard tonight, that's just not the case for a lot of people. A full 47% of Lincolnites that rent spend more than 1/3 of their income on rent. That is a significant portion of their income, and it's even worse if you're extremely low income. Extremely low income folks spend 91% of extremely low income Lincolnites spend more than 1/3 of their income on rent. And also, as we've heard, if you're earning that level of income, it's going to be pretty hard to meet all your other necessities. But I'd like to spend the rest of my time with you talking about housing adequacy and conditions like faulty plumbing, mold, or other code issues. This does affect a lot of folks in our city, as we've heard tonight and over the course of the work we've been doing the last couple years. and it is a threat to people's health and safety. In general, city inspections are focused on the exterior and common areas of apartments in units where there are 3 or more units. The inspection of conditions on the interior primarily rely on a tenant complaint system, where the number of complaints a certain number of complaints are needed to trigger an internal inspection. But what we've heard over the course of the work we've been doing with others over the past couple of years is that the complaint system is just not effective for many people because families facing these conditions either don't know that they can complain or they're really concerned about landlord retaliation. In other words, if they complain, they're afraid that there will be some sort of reason given for them and they need to get evicted. We have heard from people directly after one individual was trying to organize his particular apartment building where there were bad conditions. After he started doing that, his landlord did find a reason to evict him. And it may not be that hard to find a small lease term that was not complied with as a reason to push someone out. So it's our perspective that the city should adopt a proactive periodic inspection system whereby interior inspections are part of the typical permit inspection. In other words, align it as much as possible with the current permit inspection that individuals have to get in order to rent. Cities in Nebraska have taken this up. Cities in the rest of the nation have successfully implemented this. And it could be designed in a way to reward landlords that have buildings and units that are up to code and put them on a larger periodic inspection scheme, 24 months or more. So you're letting the folks that are doing the work well, they get rewarded and they're inspected less. Meanwhile, if you have units where there are significant code problems, they're put on a shorter periodic schedule and inspection happens more routinely until those problems are addressed. So in addition to that, just wanted to try and speak to Councilman Christensen's question about cost. Our perspective is that the city could design a fee structure that is fair and reasonable, and I would consider delegating that authority to the city department to come up with what that should look like. I don't think fees for inspections have gone up in some time. But the amount of fee could be typically small compared to the amount of rent that landlord would get. For example, in Council Bluffs, where they do interior inspections, the fee is about $30, which is less than 1% of the median rent.
1 minute.
So in conclusion, what I would say is we can work to housing affordability and we can work towards housing adequacy at the same time. I don't think that they're in any way mutually exclusive. It just would take proper calibration and some work. And with that, I'll conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Questions for this testimony? Councilman Eskridge.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on the $30 figure. Is that an annual fee?
Yes. So that comes from Council Bluffs, looking at what the monthly rent is for the average medium rent, and so that equaled out to be about $30 per unit for the costs of inspection, which was about 1% of rent.
Okay.
In Council Bluffs.
And again, $30 per year per unit, so $5 a month. Is that
right? That sounds right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Other questions for Mr. Goddard? Mr. Goddard, thank you very much for your testimony. Are there others in the chamber that would like to speak during our public comment portion?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs of Lincoln Government. One way for you and the voting public to, in a few weeks, help those who want and need affordable housing is to vote against the sales tax on the coming ballot, which is due in a few weeks. It's an economic fact that sales tax is regressive and hurts the low-income population the most. and will eat into their income and lower their ability to afford decent housing. In the future, if it passes, it'll be an additional burden. Voting to defeat the sales tax ballot is one way for everyone to provide affordable housing in a short time. We urge every council member and the citizens of Lincoln to defeat the measure and force Lincoln leaders to come up with another way to improve our streets that are less punitive to those who can least afford an additional burden. It would also be supportive of Prosper Lincoln, which is trying to help low-income Lincoln residents improve their lot. I don't think the people who were on this committee that decided on this were considering that they are at odds with that group, or that it was going to hurt. Maybe they weren't aware of the economic fact. A little lesson there might have been helpful to them. So we're urging people to here tonight, if they want affordable housing, this is one quick way that they can get the movement started.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey. Are there others that would like to participate in the public comment portion?
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Rankin, CEO of NeighborWorks Lincoln. That's MikeRenken, and I'm at 2715 Docks Drive. And you've heard a lot about affordable housing. Most of it is focused on rentals. I think that's appropriate, and I think inspections and improving the quality of those units is extremely important for this city. The other side of that is if we do not enforce codes, it allows landlords to keep properties longer than they probably should, which then prevents us from doing the infill work that we do in the neighborhoods to improve our neighborhoods with new constructions or rehab of existing properties. I think it's important for us to look at that and make a conscious decision that having quality, affordable homes are important for not only renters but home ownership too. And if there aren't code enforcement, it makes our challenge of buying those worst of the worst properties to do something with them in our core neighborhoods very, very difficult. It is, I just think it's, as everybody said, it's extremely important to continue our efforts to do whatever we can to enhance affordable housing, whether it's rental or home ownership. It's important for people to have quality homes to live in, and I would encourage you to do everything you can to enhance code enforcement so we can drive people to do the right things, because not always are the right things being done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin. Questions from the council? Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there others that wish to participate in our public comment portion? Councilman Camp, you want to help me out here?
I would help you out. I would move for adjournment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Would you call the roll, please?
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge? Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
We are adjourned.